Shut up and sit down.
The current state of politics is unsustainable, politically, economically.
You still have distrust there.
We all come from very different places.
Man, we don't want the government to do a damn thing.
You deserve better.
People have to have the information in front of them.
It is about supporting, platforming, and assisting the people who are out here actually doing the fight.
There you go. Like, just promote people who are doing something. Volunteer to work with people who you like. And
take an issue that's important to you and do something.
You are part of that declaration against tyranny.
This conversation gives me a little more hope for the future.
The one, the only.
Fight for liberty. This is the cherry on top.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to The Fight and another great episode of Fite Club coming at you. Sometimes it's more about the fight, sometimes it's more about the club. Tonight's going to be the latter, with three of my favorite libertarians in existence coming on to talk about their experience in the sales industry. So I'm really excited about that. But first, as always, just a quick word from our sponsors. First up, Streamlabs Ultra. Create high-quality content of your own with Streamlabs Ultra, an all-in-one streaming service that combines most of the needed functionality of OBS, Restream, Shopify, and Canva. Streamlabs Desktop gives you a full open-source broadcast system with a guest camera and a multi-streaming abilities built right in, and their online dashboard helps you create logos, thumbnails, overlay, a merch store, a website, and more, all with more templates than you'll know what to do with. And all of this is just $19 a month or $149 a year. That's less than Restream or Shopify. So for this very low price, you can get pretty much everything you need to run a successful podcast, gaming stream, or vlog. And if you click the link in the description below, you get $9 off your first month or $10 off your first year. And yeah, go check them out. They are great. They're what I use. Next up, Crafton Business Services. This episode brought to you by Crafton Business Services. They are dedicated to helping entrepreneurs start, grow, and maintain their businesses by providing a wide variety of products and services to make your business more efficient, manageable, and profitable. Crafton understands how frustrating getting your business off the ground can be, and that's why they've put together their business-in-a-box solutions to turn your idea or side hustle into a fully functioning company in one place for one transparent cost. For under $1,000, you get your corporate filing, registered agent, a logo, business cards, a marketing strategy, and an accounting consultation to get you started on the right foot. All of that for just $9.99 plus state theft. And if you are looking for more than that, you can add a custom website, web hosting, more marketing material, more time with our marketing team, 5 times the bookkeeping services, and your first box of business cards for $24.99. Again, plus state theft. So go to crafton.us to get up and running and use promo code F4L for free Crafton t-shirt and support the show. Again, that's crafton.us. Promo code F4L. Now let's get on with the show. Without further ado, let's introduce our guests for the evening. We have out of Arizona, Mr. Jeremy Todd.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
What? Has it been
Kentucky.
that long since we've talked? Kentucky.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Out of Kentucky, Mr. Jeremy
Cincy
Todd.
Era. Yeah.
Out of Indiana, Mr. Brian Nichols, and out of Maine, Mr. Harrison Kemp. Hello, gentlemen. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hi, David.
All right. So you guys have all been on the show before, but for the newbies who don't know who you are, give us just like a quick overview of how, like, your first sales job, how you got pulled into this BS, and then tell me everything you've ever sold. Starting with Jeremy.
Okay. First sales job was
And
Cutco.
everything you sold, Jeremy. Don't forget a single thing.
There's a lot. Cutco. I did that for 5 years. That's really sort of my school of hard knocks, where I learned how to sell, was kitchen knives in people's homes and then training people to do that. And then from there, I dabbled in apartment locating for a little while, which is really kind of an apartment sales gig. Sold cars for a little while. Then got into banking. I was a personal banker, worked my way up in that field, left, then spent a few years in the telecom industry, and then got back into banking. And now the new gig, I am in the group entertainment space. So yeah, very, very exciting.
Fun. How about you, Mr. Nichols?
Yeah, my main kickoff into this whole crazy world of sales. So I used to be the director of marketing at Gold's Gym, but I also air quote carried a gym bag, and would help sign up new memberships. So that was kind of my first sneak peek into to real life sales. And then I went into the telco industry, did that for a number of years. And then as we grew as a company, we absorbed the cybersecurity into our tech stack. So did a lot in that world, did that for about 6.5 years. And just recently started a new company doing specifically contact center, call center type solutions for advanced telco solutions. So in that space, that's kind of been my world is I guess technology and all that fun stuff. So yeah, and I the biggest thing I've sold, I guess, would be like a big contact center piece back in 2022 for a bank in Ohio.
Nice. All right. And Mr. Kemp?
Yeah, I got into sales back in 2017. I was finishing up college, really bored with it, needed something that paid the bills, so found a car sales job. Ended up loving sales, not necessarily car sales, but just the idea of being able to help people solve problems.
Yeah.
And nowadays I'm in the IT space, so I help companies solve their IT problems and connect them to resources. And I don't really think of myself as a salesman. I'm more a professional problem solver with a boatload of resources.
There you go.
So,
Like that.
Oh, that's a really good way of framing it. My initial sales job was actually insurance. I worked for like Liberty Mutual, and then a couple of other I worked for Aflac and like a few of those different spaces, and that was technically my intro. Say again?
Did you get to meet the duck?
I didn't. He came to our office the day before I got hired. It was such a shame. I will shameless plug. Aflac's a terrible company to work for, but it's a great product. I genuinely believed in that product when I was selling it, and still do. It's one of the only products that I used to sell that I still actually somewhat sell to people if they ask me, like, "Oh, my business is thinking about adding Aflac. Should I do it?" It's like, yes.
I'll go work for them.
Don't. Yeah, no, they pay for shit. And then I sold clothes, and then I sold more clothes. I had multiple retail jobs, and then sold jewelry, and then money, and then back to clothes. And then I guess I always considered all of my political jobs as sales jobs too, because door to door or call center, it's still the same thing as a street sales job. So I sold a couple of candidates, and now I'm back to selling business finance stuff and small business solutions with Crafton. So that's been fun.
Nice.
But yeah, I feel like no salesman makes their career in the thing that they start out with. Every company tries to make it seem like they do. You start off here and you're going to be a CEO of this branch off company in 10 years and whatever. Never seems to happen, but you jump 2 or 3 ships and then take off. Has that been your guys' experience too?
Oh yeah, I haven't come in at an entry level in years, but what is interesting is that while that has been my experience, I've been able to jump industry to industry and sort of maintain that same upper management type level. Sorry. Here.
Go.
Take it, buddy. You can go play with the guitar. Take it, it's yours.
That is so much more trust than I would give my son. Jesus.
It's his mother's guitar. So there is this new pervading, I guess, belief system or theory in sales that I'm seeing a lot of people say, where the important thing for sales as you evolve is being a product like a subject matter expert. And while I feel there's a lot of value in that, it has not been my experience that you have to be super expert in your field in order to be an effective either leader in that field or salesperson. But I could see where there's obviously value in that.
I agree. So I started out as I knew nothing about technology, about cybersecurity, about hosted telephony. All those words were Latin to me. So kind of going in first of knowing your role, kind of as you mentioned, Jeremy, and I think Harrison, you tease this, right? Being a problem solver. And I try to like put on my doctor coat and look at each of my customers as a patient and understand that there's a reason that they're talking to me. Like beyond trying to figure out like, how do I sell this deal or how do I frame this up so I know it's going to be in the pipeline for next quarter? Like understanding that the only reason that person's even talking to you to begin with is because there's probably something there that's a problem that they need addressed, whether it's an obvious problem or something that they feel, but they don't know how to articulate, and us being able to ask the right questions to be able to get to the point where we're not only identify that problem, but we show them the path to help solve that problem. And then that's where, as Jeremy mentioned, being the product expert and knowing that your product not only is the right product for them, but your product is the best product out there, to believe in your product and basically like understand that if you don't do your job in helping sell the solution to your customer, then they're still going to suffer with that problem. So they're doing themselves a disservice by not buying and trying to frame it in that way. I found that that's been very helpful for me because frankly, one of the biggest challenges I've ever had was getting out of my own head, thinking like, oh, I'm going to push too hard. I'm going to make people not like me. And it's like, no, this is my role. I am the professional problem solver. I'm helping you address the problem that you would not be speaking to me about unless you knew deep down that there is something that you need to have addressed. And then it's just a matter of trying to align what the problem is, the value of solving that problem, the ROI there, and then whatever the air quote price is that we're bringing to the table from the solving it perspective. So,
yeah.
Yeah, and even if you just think about like when you go to buy something yourself, or you go to buy a car, if the salesman comes out and he's just, here's the horsepower, here's the 0 to 60 safety rating, just rattling off fact after fact, you're going to walk away. You're going to be overwhelmed. You're not going to care. This person took no time to learn about what's important to you, about why do you want this car. But if you get that salesperson who's like, oh, hey, how many kids do you have? Is it important for you to be able to transport friends with that as well? Or, learning about what you do. Do you golf? Okay, we need to find something with enough room for clubs. Do you bring people with you? But that has nothing to do with them relaying a bunch of data to you. Yeah. And so like in my job, what I do, I need to know enough so that when a customer says something like, I need a 48 port switch, I just need to know what that means enough to contact the right person.
Yeah.
I need to know, hey, okay, so you need this switch. Do you have a particular brand in mind? I don't need to know how that switch functions. I don't need to know all the ins and outs of it. I just need to know who to go to, and that customer will be able to kind of help me along the way. But if I ask the right questions and uncover what they need, and that's why it's so important to also know like what kind of sales cycle are you in? Are you in a car dealership, or are you selling life insurance, big, massive IT solutions? Because those are two different sales cycles, right? If you meet someone on a car lot, you might have them gone in 2.5 hours with a new car. But what the three of us do, it could take weeks or months before we close a project.
Yeah.
So knowing what you do is really important too.
Yeah. I'm glad, Brian, that you mentioned that, like, that fear that you had to overcome of being too pushy, because that was also like my biggest problem throughout my entire sales career. Is like I have always kind of struggled with minor social anxiety, and just like I always feel like I'm too much and like I'm annoying people around me. So like even way back when, so I guess technically the first thing I ever sold was popcorn for Boy Scouts, right? And even making the phone calls to sell popcorn, or like stopping people at church to sell popcorn, I was like, you guys probably want to be getting off to lunch though, right? Like you don't want to talk to me about this. They're like, what if they're eating dinner? I don't want to call them in the middle of dinner. Then they're going to be mad at me. Then they're going to not like me. And like, I talked myself out of so many sales for so long. And I finally kind of had the same realization you mentioned, where it's just like, they need something. And if they don't need anything, asking them the right questions will give them the no. And, they can talk themselves out of the sale. If they actually don't need a single thing from me, then we can clarify that quickly and get them on their way. Otherwise, let's find the actual problem and where we can help them. And it's not about closing the deal. It's about helping the client. And that's also like a much better framework for sales, I think.
Yeah, you've got to be entirely detached emotionally from your outcomes.
Yes.
When you're in sales, You've got to
Took
understand.
the words out of my mouth, Jeremy. That's where I was going. Yep.
I've got a process. I'm going to follow that process. If I can help you, great. If I can't, move along. Like, that's okay. I'm not emotionally attached. Now, what's interesting is you will see that. And Brian, you just left a BDR team. For those who may not know what that means, that's business development reps. These are groups of people who all they do all day is make cold calls to set appointments for the salespeople. So loads of rejection, loads of difficulty, tiny wins. You don't even get to get the deal across the finish line. God bless BDRs. But ultimately, it's situations where you are in a mindset or even in a reality of there is I have a limited mind. I forget what it's called, but like a limited mindset versus an unlimited mindset. When that switch finally flips for you, that like, hey, I have an unlimited capacity, ability, unlimited number of people, each little one begins to matter a little bit less, so that you can then follow your process, do what's right, do what David's talking about there, find the problem, find what matters. And then that you won't trigger sales resistance by being and coming across as desperate, and it helps you feel less anxious when you emotionally detach from your outcomes.
And understanding too that not everybody is going to be your customer. Like that for me, like I always assume the sale, but also understand that I'm not going to win everybody over, and that there are just by the nature of being a person in this world, there are going to be people who don't like you, and that's okay. Like that means you stand for something, or you represent something that they don't like. And you know what? Sometimes that's a good thing. Like don't look at having to have everybody like you as the goal. Your goal is to help solve the problem of the people who need help. Who is your niche? And this is something that drives me crazy, you know, not trying to make this at all about politics, but you know, when we're talking about the world of liberty politics, we try to make it so our market is everyone, but that's not who our market is. And when you try to make your market everybody, your market's nobody. And you end up getting hit with a lot more rejection because you're trying to solve problems for people that don't view that they have a problem. And instead, I say, let's spend our time talking to the people who at least are acknowledging that something's up, they have a problem, or they're trying to solve that problem already. That's going to be an easier conversation because they're already in the trigger event of understanding that they have a problem needing solved. And I don't want to spend extra time trying to force somebody to see the problem versus knowing there are people who already have that problem and are ready to solve it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I also don't want to talk about politics too much, but that's actually what kind of helped me flip that switch originally, was switching to selling campaigns and stuff, because it's a lot more obvious, I think, that it's a no is a lot more clear and concise when it comes to politics, especially if you're working for like a duopoly candidate and you happen to knock on the wrong door and it's somebody in the opposite party. It's like, that's a no. That's just a no. Do not waste a second. If you're like, hey, I'm from the South Carolina GOP. Fuck you guys. I'm a Democrat. Okay, walk away. It's just like, it's super easy. It's
Are
like,
you sure you're not a Republican or Libertarian? Come on.
It's like, it's so much clearer and more concise. Sorry, go ahead, Harris.
Well, the important thing too is to realize that it takes, depending on your industry, depending on how good you are, it takes 7 to 10, let's say, no's before you'll get someone who will engage with you and who could be a customer of yours. So that's why it's so important to love your process, because you're going to spend a lot more time doing the prospecting part of your job and of this process than you are the, you know, really high-end dopamine rush part of closing it and getting a yes. So you need to love saying hi to people. You need to love talking. If you don't, you're going to struggle because you don't get a lot of positive reinforcement along the way. And that's why a lot of salespeople, after, you know, a couple of weeks, a month, however long without a sale, they start to get real desperate and they start, you know, cutting the prices on quotes they've already sent out, and their customers can smell it. They're like, there's something wrong. I don't trust this. Yeah, they know it. They can sense it and they move on. And unless you're a monopoly, which none of us are, you can't do that. You're going to get run out. So yeah, it's just really important, along with everything they said, to know that you're going to have a lot of shit coming at you where you lose, no matter what you're selling. You could be selling Apple, which is the biggest known brand in the world, and people are still going to say no every day.
Yeah.
Can I give you guys something? I just spent the last 3 days in an audiobook about dopamine, and Harrison brought it up, and I want to go off on a weird tangent about it for a minute, if that's okay. So
the floor is yours, sir.
There's two sides to that dopamine thing. And so I got into this book because I believe I suffer from some pretty severe ADHD, which there's a lot more coming out, that there's a little bit of a dopamine problem going on there. So I'm trying to just learn a little bit about myself so I can really be more effective as a human. So one of the interesting things about the way the brain works with dopamine and the reward pathways is it is connected to our pain pathway directly. And one of the things that has sort of set us off into a weird direction as society is we've really tilted that way. We have unlimited pleasure at our disposal nonstop. And so your body and your brain actually starts to become numb to it. So I say that because one of the things she talks about in the book is how you can utilize pain to sort of reset your dopamine back into normal kilter. And so that was a moment for me where I was like, man, you hear it all the time about like, it's the shitty times that make you appreciate the good times, but that's everything in life. And even in sales, if you can fall in love with rejection, because literally physically, like biologically, rejection changes your brain to where you actually still get the thrill of the sale. When I've created environments in the past where it became a little too comfortable for sales reps and they were basically just winning, there's a lot of order taking. Essentially, I handed them everything rather than just the things that they earned, rather than departmentalizing that into sort of a different department that handles it. And they all sort of just fizzled out eventually because all they were used to was winning, and there was no thrill in the win anymore. So rejection is an important, it is crucial to go through that pain and rejection. Otherwise, it's actually not that much fun to do what we do.
No. I want to hit one more thing that Harrison was talking about, because I found one of my biggest problems, especially when I was doing like the financial sales side of things, because it was cold calling and then like a 2-week sales process to sometimes like a 6-week sales process. And I kept getting myself in this loop where I would do the cold calls and I would hit a good stride and I would fill up my sales funnel, and then I would stop cold calling and just work on my funnel.
Yeah,
and
we call that the 90-day rule.
Yeah, and just empty out my funnel with maybe one close and have nothing to go off of afterwards. And then I'm just sitting there with nothing. And I don't want to cold call because like I've already like got it in my head that like I'm not like, and I just like keep getting myself in this rut of like, I think that because things are moving well and I have like a job where inbound leads are kind of a thing, and if I do a good enough job on what's in my funnel, I'll get the inbound leads. And I kind of have this thing set up in my head that like, if I just do everything right, I'll never have to make another cold call again. And that is always a lie.
Yep.
I'm still making cold calls. I made some yesterday.
Cold calls are super important. I mean, like I spend at least 45%, I'd say, of my time looking for new business. And that's just because like there are so many trigger events that take place at any given time that if you're not, and you kind of hit what the consequence is there if you don't cold call, is that you end up where you get bottom of funnel and all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, I have nobody to sell to. And if you, let's say you close 20% of all your deals in your funnel, right? That's great. But if you have nothing to replace that with, you get to the end of Q3 and then your sales manager sits down and says, all right, how's your Q4 looking there, David? And you're gonna be like, I don't know. And if you have a sales cycle, you know, as Harrison mentioned, that takes from, you know, several months to in some cases over a year, then all of a sudden you're in a position where you're praying that you get some whale of an account that's going to save your year. And you know, it just goes back to any healthy habit, right? Is you have to keep at it. So whether it's cold calling, you know, whether it's traditional prospecting or knocking on doors, referral partners, whatever it may be, you have to do something to keep those leads coming in, because you don't want to be in a situation where you find yourself at the end of the quarter end of the year and you're shit out of luck because you don't have anything ready to close. So yeah, cold calling is so important.
Yeah. And posting on LinkedIn is not cold calling.
No,
it's not.
No,
It's
it's
marketing.
not. And you know, a lot of folks, I mean, it really depends on how long of a sales cycle you have, but I think of it as the 90-day rule because that works for my sales cycle. But it's basically whatever cold calling and prospecting I do within this 30 days affects my funnel for the next 90, which determines my paycheck, which determines my quarter, which determines if I get a promotion, a raise, etc. So I really try to focus and make, you know, 40+% of my time on just calling people I've never called before or spoken to before. The rest of it, I try to take meetings with clients to, you know, further projects or whatever it may be. But there's always new things going on. Like in my world right now, Adobe's doing a massive price increase. That's something I can call thousands of people on. And everyone I call is going to need it because they all have Adobe. Every person in America uses Adobe, I'm sure, pretty much. So, you know, knowing your client base and like Brian said, knowing the trigger events and taking advantage of them.
Can I ask you guys about a phenomenon I thought about, and I'm just curious if it's just me. I wrote it down in my notes. I have a long, do you guys have an Apple list of notes of like, well, epiphanies basically? That's what I have. Yeah, I have an epiphanies folder in my Apple notes. I wrote down Schrodinger's lead. And if you don't know, Schrodinger's cat was a thought experiment. I hope it was a thought experiment, basically. But basically what it says is that you put a cat in a box and you put a vial of poison in that box set to a timer, and you don't know when that timer goes off in the future. Once you close the lid, the cat is both simultaneously dead and alive at the same time. The phenomenon is sometimes either it'll be a cold call or a lead or a prospect, and I'm like, oh man, this is a good one. And I have this massive hesitancy to reach out to it, because if I don't reach out to it, it's still alive, baby. It doesn't die. And do you guys ever have that phenomenon?
All the time.
Yes.
I had an account I was working on in Philadelphia. Well, let me rephrase that. Before I worked in this account in Philadelphia, and I knew for a fact I'd worked on the account back in 2018. I knew in 2021 that they were going to be coming up for renewal, and it was like a 25K amount, 25K per month account. And I was terrified to reach back out because I knew, even though I had lost it the first time and I knew it was going to be coming back up for opportunity, I was like, well, it's still an opportunity in my mind until I hear the word no. And I think, Jeremy, that's hitting exactly what you're talking about, right?
Yes, 100%. Where you're like, as long as it's in my pipeline, right? Even though it's at the top of the funnel, it's alive. It's not dead yet. And I still have hope. And I don't want to crush that hope. So
hopium. You're smoking the hopium.
Yeah, you have this massive hesitancy to reach out.
I used to struggle from that. I've gotten a lot better with it recently, just because my book of business is way too massive. It's exploding. I'm getting yelled at by my managers to shrink it down. And so these days I'm loving it, just going through and killing customers that have no interest with me, but I've been holding on to, because now I'm like being forced to. But yeah, I held on to them for months and months just because, like, no, they're still there. We're talking through email, I swear. But if, you know, we had that phone call within 10 minutes, they'd be like, yeah, actually, we don't need you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's
kind of like the flip side of call reluctance, where it's like, you know, call reluctance, you don't want to call anybody, but these folks, you don't want to talk to them because you know it's going to ruin it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just suffered from Schrodinger's lead when I had to reach out to Brian like a week and a half ago. I was like, oh, it's like intimidating, man.
Me?
I'm literally the nicest human alive.
Right. All right. So I'm curious what your guys' most rewarding sale you've ever made was. That can either be like just made you feel good or biggest commission, whichever one actually outweighs the other one.
I want to start this one because it was something that I didn't get a lot of commission from, but man, it made me feel good. So for those who don't know, I used to weigh 385 pounds. I was a big boy. And when I was working at Gold's Gym, I had lost a ton of weight at that point, and part of helping bring in new members is to kind of know their story. And there was this one guy who, when I first started at Gold, that he came in and he was so obviously uncomfortable. He was morbidly obese, probably pushing, I think, like 400 some odd pounds. Large guy, great guy, just is like genuine and gentle as the day is long. And he was just terrified of going to an actual gym. And I, walked him through the gym. I showed him everything. And the Gold's gym that I manage up in Northern New York, massive gym. Like, it was a huge, huge, huge gym. And it was a little overwhelming for him, but ended up, I walked him through our personal training classes. I showed him the value of not just sitting down with someone who knows what they're doing, but who can keep him accountable. And after going through, signing him up, it wasn't a huge commission, but it was still a nice win. And as I left the gym after, I forget how long I was there, but when I was leaving, to see him at the gym the next time, how much weight he had already lost in like the time that I'd been working there was so rewarding, because I knew that was as a result of me getting him in this gym. He not only was hesitant about the gym to begin with, he was hesitant about working out in general. He was like, I don't know if I had the time. I don't know if it's going to work. I mean, all the objections that we toss out there. And to see, not only did he listen to my advice as a sales professional in this case, but as someone who walked in his shoes and said, like, dude, I get it. I used to be you. And to then see that he was able to have the success, oh man, it was awesome, right? Like, to know that I helped him better his life, but it was through me doing a sale.
Harrison, go next if you've got yours.
Yeah. For me, it was back when I sold cars, I had this older couple come in. They were on Social Security, disability, very, they were broke. They didn't have much income, and they just ended up having to take custody of 2 grandchildren. So they had to move from a hoopty, broken down car to a minivan that was reliable, could take a baby and an 8 or 9 year old. And we had nothing that was in their price range. We couldn't find anything. I spent days, and then finally we were able to get some customer who brought a van in, and my manager hated me for it, but we went to bat, and I was like, look, we got to get this van. And we ended up getting it for super cheap. Kind of ended up, probably broke a rule or two, but I told the folks who we were going to sell it to and their story, and they took pity, and they were like, all right, we'll let you have it, so it'll fit in their range. We made no money on that. Like, we lost money after we put tires and an inspection sticker on it, but they were able to get out the door in their newer van that was safe, passed inspection, had room for everybody. And we were really able to help them out of a horrible spot they were in. God, it was years ago. I still tear up when I think about it. But, and that kind of, to Brian's point, is like the power of a salesperson is we can change lives, but we also change our own lives in the process.
Beautifully put. How about you, Jeremy?
Yeah,
bumper stickers for that.
Mine is Emily's Heirloom and pound cakes. I was in small business banking at the time, so she came in, just filed her LLC. Basically, she made cakes that her family loved, and they were like, "You should try to sell these, right?" So she created a little Facebook page, filed for an LLC, that sort of thing, and came in to open a checking account, but I was like, nope, I'm going to follow my process. I'm not going to be an order taker. I dug a little bit, talked about like what she had going on, why she was inspired to do this. She had gotten Sam's Club to allow her to set up a table to sell these. And I was like, interesting. Okay. So we really dug a little bit and ended up getting her. By the way, if you are unfamiliar with business credit, from a large national bank, you don't file for an LLC and then a week later get a loan. That is not a thing that happens. But I was like, let's give it a shot. And I guess they looked at her previous, history with the bank, and they went, okay, cool. So I got her a check for 20 grand, and we made a plan on what she was going to do, what she was going to buy. And ultimately, I saw the other day, she is now carried in all Sam's Club stores in the Southeast.
Whoa.
And they just they expanded to a $6,000 or not $6,000, 6,000 square foot production facility.
Nice.
And so
Wow.
this could have, if I had not done my discovery that day, it's entirely possible this could have been never gotten beyond a fundraiser for Emily. So yeah, that's mine. And what I find, David, I don't mean to cut you off, but what I find interesting about this is the first three of us are like, okay, I made some money, but it wasn't very much. I got some proxy on it, and it upped my bonus, maybe, I don't know, $20 maybe. But all three of us did not go to something that made us very much money. And that's a point.
I'm actually kind of glad about that. Like, I worded the question the way I did because I kind of had a feeling that it wouldn't be that. And honestly, for me, my most rewarding sale technically is when I actually didn't make a sale at all. I was working in the small business loan space, and I wasn't working for a nice large bank like you were. I was doing like merchant cash advance, like basically payday loans for small businesses.
Yeah.
And I had this client that I ended up closing, I think 5 or 6 times throughout like an almost year and a half long period for multiple different companies that I work for, as well as my own when I went out on my own. This dude literally kept me alive because I closed a deal. He was like the only person I closed for in like a 3-month span when I was trying to start my own business. But then like my very last job, I reached out to him and I was like, hey, and it's been a little while because I had just done politics for a little bit and was kind of jumping back into it. I was like, it's been a little while, like, is there anything that I can do for you? And he was like, no, I'm actually never going to take out a merchant cash advance again. I just got a $25,000 revolving line of credit from Chase, and I think I'm good. And I'm like, I love it. I love it.
Got you there.
Yeah. Because like multiple of the things that I'd helped him do were like reverse consolidations and trying to like balance his debt and like get it down to manageable. And then once it was manageable and he was expanding or doing something with a legitimate ROI, I would help him add on more debt. And like I really tried to not when I first met him, he had like 7 loans out and was drowning in them. And 2 years later, my last phone call with him, like I said, he had a revolving line of credit from Chase, like so much better off.
Nice.
And I'm like, I don't even care that I didn't make any money off of you today, because that made me feel amazing.
It's great news.
And I just kind of want to add something here. Like, there's a constant theme here, and something that you should think of when you go out and you're looking for a salesman, right? If you're not in sales yourself, is how does this person treat me? Like, are they treating me like they want to help? Are they asking quote unquote personal questions, or are they just talking about money and stats? And if they're helping you, they're going to have to learn about you as a person. So like when that salesperson's like, how many kids do you have? If it's relevant to the product you're buying, answer the question. Don't mislead your salesperson, because then you're going to end up with a good salesperson providing you a very wrong solution. And then it's going to make the whole process painful and not enjoyable. And then be willing to say, hey, I don't need your help once you don't need it, like David's guy did.
Yeah. Don't do the Ron Swanson, like, I know more than you thing. Like, I mean, maybe if you're in Lowe's, you can do that. But like, unless you are 100% sure that you know exactly what you want and need, let the salesperson do their job, because most likely they know more about what they're selling than you know about what you're buying. Usually. When
you do something every day, you tend to just by osmosis know more about it than the average person. If somebody goes into a car dealership and they're like, well, I want leather, it's not up to the salesperson to say, no, you don't. They could say, okay, I understand you want leather, but have you thought about cloth? Because we live in Florida and you're going to burn yourself on leather. But it's not for that salesperson to say, no, you don't get leather. Maybe the bank says, no, you don't get leather, but that's not for you as the salesperson to say,
And one thing too, to add on to that is, and I've always hated this cliche of like, well, I'm a logical person. I make all my decisions based on logic. It's like, no, you don't. Every buying decision is an emotional decision, whether we think it is or not. And you look at the car market as the example. I mean, if we were all logical based consumers, we would all be buying pretty much the same types of car based on our particular situations in life, whether, you're a new dad or you're a single bachelor. Like, okay, there would be a typical car for that person, right? And yet we have people who they want a different color. They want a different shape of the car. They want the bells and whistles. And there's a reason emotionally for them to want that. And I'll tell you a real life example. I had a buddy of mine who was a car salesman, and he was talking about how he had this one lady who she kept going through all these different cars, and she just could not land on the car, right? And he's like, what the hell? Like, I'm showing her everything she's asking for. Like, she's asking for, oh, if I want to start a family, like, will it have room to expand? Like, all these little things that were like, yeah, that makes sense when you're looking for a car. And every car he showed her, though, she didn't like it. And he finally was able, through digging the questions, realize that the reason she didn't like the car wasn't because of the features of the car, it was because of the color of the car. Here's the thing. The car was a black car, and her ex-husband used to have corporate cars he'd get from his job. There were always the safe colors, the blacks, the grays, the whites, right? And she disliked her ex-husband so much that she did not want to have a quote unquote corporate car. And she wanted a sexy red car. And that was something, it was so like minor on the list of things that he was thinking about when he was asking questions, that it was like, wow, that's all it was. That's all I had to show you was some of our red cars or our different colored cars that weren't your traditional safe colors. But it was that emotional trigger for her that was the ending, like the ultimate buying decision. And it's the stuff like that I think we don't think about, because we know our product and we know the logical reasons that our products make sense for people, but we have to focus on what's the emotional reason that somebody wants to buy our product. And 9 times out of 10, it's to not look stupid when they go to the leadership and present the solution that they bought, or to not look stupid to their friends. They want the justifications of the logic and the reasonings to explain why their solution that they purchased made sense. But the actual act of deciding we are going to buy your solution, your car, and here's the reason, is almost always an emotional one.
Yeah.
There's 2 things I do when go ahead, Harrison.
Oh, I was going to say, and you can think of it with house buying, you can think of it with buying clothes, whatever it is. You're always trying to use your purchase as some kind of status symbol or something to make your life more comfortable. It's not because it's the cheapest. It's not because blue doesn't absorb speedometer rays the same or sun the same. It's got nothing to do with that. Like Brian said, there's always some weird thing, and it could even be something like, hey, they don't want to switch from Adobe to whatever new service, even though it's going to be almost double the price, because Adobe is a safe bet. No one's ever gotten fired for recommending Adobe or Microsoft in their office before. And everyone you talk to, if you're a salesperson, they have a boss, and they've got to show their boss and justify why they did this thing. And well, my salesperson is really neat and had a great tongue and convinced me, that's not going to keep his job and food on his family's plate. So
right.
That's the reason why I genuinely like B2B sales more than anything else, is because it's a little bit more on the logic to emotion spectrum. And like, there's still emotion behind it and you need to like hit the things, but it is a little bit more like, especially if you're dealing directly with like business owners, if you're doing like small business stuff, is it's like, these are usually fairly like right brain, detail oriented, fact oriented people who would be a small business owner. And I've always kind of enjoyed that part of it, because it's like, sometimes I really suck at doing the emotional sale. Genuinely, it is not my strong suit.
I was gonna say, there's 2 things I do, and they're pretty simple changes when I take over managing a sales team. I almost always have to get in there, and in my first observations, I go, okay, they're answering questions. That's what they're doing. Customers are asking questions, they're providing answers. I've got to flip that. That's phase 1. I've got to get them to stop answering questions and start asking questions. So that's number one. And so they'll ask the questions like, well, okay, what color car are you interested in? What type of seats would you like? That's phase one. If you can get to that point, you can create a very mediocre salesperson. Then the second step is making them come to you as a manager and answer the second question, which is why. Okay, they said they want a black car. Okay, why?
Yep.
Why is that what they want? What is it in them that makes that pushes that motivational lever to that? And sometimes it's like, it's their favorite color. But sometimes, like Brian said, it's, they want a red car because their ex had a black one. Well, now you got something. Now we've reached a place where we know something. So those are two important phases. Be sure you're asking the questions, and then every question that you get a fact or a piece of information that you need in order to make a decision about your product. It's not just the answer to that question. It's, okay, tell me why. Why is that important to you? Why do you care about this?
Hey guys, I got to bounce, but this has been awesome, and we should do this again.
For sure.
Totally
Thanks
agree.
for coming on.
All right, dad duty. Time for me to run. I'll talk to you guys soon.
See you, buddy.
Good seeing you again, Brian.
See ya.
All right. So let's talk terrible bosses. Hit me with some fun stories of bad bosses.
I've been kind of lucky in this regard, but I've had incompetent bosses, not bad bosses. I haven't had anyone that was outright mean or, would try and, screw me over on pay or anything like that. But when I was in the car industry, man, I had an owner who just didn't know what she was doing and wanted to micromanage everything throughout the dealership. And then we had a general sales manager who I was really good friends with, very friendly, and let me put it that way. We were friendly, but he just didn't really know. He wasn't up to date on the new stuff that was going on, had no idea what the markets were doing. If it wasn't in his little book that he had, his little NADA book, it didn't exist. So that's really my worst experience. But the one time that I got screwed over by a boss, I'll tell you what, I was going out. It was, I worked at a dealership where we got paid per car, right? So the more cars you sold, the more you made. We didn't get a profit, based on GP or anything, which I really liked because it was just incentive to help people buy cars rather than sell a car. And so I'm at this point where I have 29 cars out for the month. If I get this 30th one out, I get a fat bonus. And, trying to get the deal closed. And I go up to the manager. I'm like, hey, if I can come down another $8 a month on payment, they'll close. And in my head, it's like, we're going to close on that. This is a lease. $8 a month is like $400. We're going to close this. And he's like, can't do it. And I was like, why are you doing this to me? You're doing this in spite of me. So, I had to go back over and then try and argue about $8. And finally, I just said to the guy, I was like, look, I think one of us is going to have to cave on this because my manager's not going to give you $8 a month for some reason. And I told him flat out, I was like, there's nothing else I can do. I've given you all the discount I can. He won't authorize anymore, which pissed me off because we still had a pretty good chunk of profit on that deal, even with the $8 discount. But it's because he didn't want me to get paid. That's all it was. He was just mad because, he hadn't been making much money, closing many deals, and I'm over here closing deals, and he's getting pissed off. But
that's awful. I can't tell if Jeremy's trying to think of a story or debate whether or not he wants to tell it.
No, I genuinely, I can't. I'm sitting here like, man, I'm just going back through every role. There was I was fired from a job where I didn't really like my boss. But that wasn't even in sales. That was I'd just gotten out of Cutco, $16 an hour. I was very poor. I needed to make some money. It was some sort of CSR role that was never fully explained to me. I was just supposed to watch somebody else and then start doing what they did too, without them actually sending me anything to do. I don't know. I never understood it. It was go 45 days in. But no, nothing. I'm really struggling, and I've been the gamut across the board of bosses. I had one who we had a sales check-in every 2 hours. Like we're reporting numbers out every 2 hours. But I was, if you saw me laughing, probably because I wonder how many people would answer this question as me. And what that list would be. But no, I hate to be a bummer, but I don't really have one at the end of the day.
I mean, hey, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
I feel like the boss that takes the cake for me, I got fired from one of my like small business finance jobs for like stealing from the company, basically. And what had happened was there were a bunch of deals that were coming in. So I was working for a lender that was just opening up a branch that was doing direct to merchant sales. Normally they worked with brokers. They'd operated for like 6 or 7 years at the time. They're one of the biggest lenders in the space. They were just trying to open up this like direct sales wing. So I was in that. And so we were actually brokering deals out to other lenders because, you know, they can't handle all of it. And I was just getting declines left and right from all of the lenders that we were signed up with. And so was my team. And we were not doing well. And so I went to my boss, like the owner of the company, and I said, I think that if we sign on a couple more lenders, we would be able to close a couple more of these deals and we would be making more money off of the leads that you're buying. Like this would be beneficial for your company. And he was like, nope, we have all the lenders we need. It covers everything from A to F paper. Like you should be fine. If you're not closing them, you're not doing a good enough job, or you're wasting your time on leads that aren't going to close anyway, and just completely shut me down. So I went to kind of the person in between us and said, like, I this is what just happened. I genuinely think we could be making more money on this. How would you suggest I go about this? Because my sales team is all about to quit because we're not closing shit. And he suggested that I submit some of these deals to the lenders that I know and come back with approvals for my boss and be like, see, I told you, like we can close this deal. Which seemed like a good plan to me. And I went through with that plan. And before I got any approvals back, I got caught doing what I was doing, which, you know, to send things to these lenders, I need to have a contract with them. I owned my own LLC at the time. So I had a partnership agreement between my personal company and these other lenders that I was sending these deals over to them under, which I understand how that looks. That's fucked.
Yep.
And, you know, they caught me in the middle of that before I was able to ever like actually say anything. And so both of the people I've mentioned in this scenario, they rank like 1 and 2 on my list of worst, because the CEO called a company-wide meeting into the office to discuss whether like this kind of like posed the hypothetical to discuss amongst almost the entire company to make everyone that I work with vocalize like, oh yeah, that would be a terrible fucking thing to do. Why would any of us do that? To my face. And then dismissed everyone but me. Well, everyone but me and the other guy in the scenario that told me to do this.
Yeah.
Asked him if he had any idea what was going on, and he said no.
No. Yeah, of course.
Just threw me right under the bus. Like, I think I would have been fine if he had stuck up for me. And like, but at that point, there is nothing I can say that doesn't sound like me just trying to save my own ass. Like, there's no reason for him to believe an excuse. I didn't even try. I was just like, I understand how this looks. Nothing I can say is going to change your mind. I promise that's not my intention, was not to screw you over at all. I hope that, you know, we could at least have a semi-professional relationship in the future, but like, I understand that you can't let me work here anymore because
yeah,
there's no way to save your ass.
That sucks. Yeah.
But less than a month and a half later, I was running for city council as a libertarian. So like, it all worked out in the end.
There you go.
Do you guys ever talk about politics on your sales calls?
No, stay away. I'll talk about inflation in the economy, but not about politics.
I currently don't get to get into that with my calls. There's not a lane carved out for it. When I was in banking, it would come up a little more. And I don't know if you guys, probably not, because why would you follow the Arizona legislature? But Liz, somebody, like, God, what's her name? Liz something just got expelled from the Arizona legislature. She was a client of mine. So awesome. We talked a little bit about it. She asked me what kind of libertarian I was. I was like, it's actually the perfect question. I see you're well versed. And so that it comes up occasionally, and like Harrison said, when it's topical, when they bring you the problem, it allows you to sort of highlight, isn't that frustrating? You know what else I heard, and you can sort of take them into that pain and paint a picture of sort of what is causing that pain, in order to sort of craft your opportunity to present a solution.
Yeah, I call it reality alley, right? And you can take a customer down reality alley and say, hey, I know you want to buy this thing, but you want to wait for whatever reason. But the way inflation is, waiting as long as you want to wait, it's going to be another 5-10%. That's what prices are doing. Let's do it now, save you that money. So you can actually use it to help you further your sales process and help customers. But I find that I can't just talk about politics. It's got to be around pricing. It's got to be around some new regulation that just came out or got repealed that's pertinent to my customers or to the product they're buying. So there's really no avenue to just talk politics. And, but I do have, like, one of my customers, I won't say who they are, but one of my customers is something that just by their nature opens up political discussion on certain fronts. So we do get into those discussions a little more, but they're very high level. It's very, like, it's kind of funny because we'll be talking about something and then just like, oh, dude, did you see this new thing's coming out? Oh yeah, I did. I can't wait for that thing, So we can talk about stuff a little bit differently. But I can't really give away much more without revealing what industry they're in. So
fair enough.
I didn't give the presentation, but I was in attendance to a presentation at Turning Point.
Fun.
Back when I was in Phoenix. Yeah. Tiny Face was not there. It was the office administration staff, but that was interesting. I will tell you, so what I sort of make my goal when I have those short opportunities is I want to sow distrust and a little bit of hatred just at institutions, right? Like just in broad terms, right? Like if I can move them in a direction where they go, yeah, the government is screwing us, that's effective, right? Like that's good. I'm moving the needle a little bit. Or the media is lying to you, right? Like if I can that's my close for a lot of those very simple interactions. And then if I continue having these interactions, that's when I can sort of get into a little more detail on, solutions and things like that. But that's sort of my broad goal is, can I get them to hate what the government is doing and therefore the government? And can I get them to hate the institutions that uphold the government?
Yeah, because if you've done a good enough job as a salesperson, you have placed yourself in their mind as a trusted, reliable source on facts. So you've already done that work, which is one of the things that like most liberty activism struggles with doing. Is like actually being a respected authority figure in someone's head. But if you're doing this on sales calls, you're already there if you're doing your job at all. And so you just trickle in these like, oh yeah, I read on antiwar.com, blah, 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 blah. instead of I read on CNN. And just like that little tiny bit is like, oh, I don't think I've ever been on that. Like, let me go. What's antiwar.com? And just that little kind of something is great. I know when I did finance, especially, I was working out of like downtown Manhattan almost the whole time, but it's a full national like industry that I was calling mostly like Midwestern and Southern small business owners. And like my favorite clients were like construction, trucking, a lot of those like real blue collar companies, because the ROIs make so much more sense for those industries than like a tech company or something like that. So I loved that shit. And most of the people that I worked with would always be like, man, I can't close any of those fucking Midwesterners. They just hate us New Yorkers. And I would get on a call with some like trucking company owner from Kentucky, and he'd be like, where's this area code? Are you guys in New York? And I'd be like, yeah, unfortunately. And I would sprinkle politics into my sales calls for a sympathy sale, because I would be like, yeah, man, we have Cuomo up here. He's just like the worst. Like, I'm trying to get out of New York, like as soon as I can, like, and I would tell people how much I hate Democrats and like how much I hate living in New York City, and they would feel sorry for me as like a good dude getting stuck in this shitty Democratic politic world. And I know that I got sales that I wouldn't have if they didn't feel a little bit sorry for me being stuck in New York. It was great.
What's interesting is I'm starting to see this, and it's trickling into big brands. There was a larger controversy recently that I don't want to go down a rabbit hole on with a big brand maybe misstepping with their target market. But it's like, are we reaching a point where you don't get to stand on the sidelines anymore, where you do have to pick a side basically, or risk becoming irrelevant, because it's really the only thing in our over stimulated world that still gets a emotional movement out of people to get emotional inertia so you telling that story, David, makes a lot of sense, because while they may go, well, his stuff is just like everybody else's, what's the point, what's the difference? Well, the difference is I'm helping somebody like me, right? I'm helping out my side a little bit, right? And I think that's, if we avoid that entirely moving forward, we're going to risk becoming irrelevant. But I also don't like that. I don't like that being a fact.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. But Harrison looks like he was trying to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that whole brand that shall not be spoken of, right? I'm pretty indifferent to a lot of things, because I don't really let brands and their advertising dictate if I like them or not. I just like a brand or I don't. And when that brand was going through that, I was like, cool, half off beer this week.
Yeah.
So that's how I viewed it. And within another couple of weeks, it's all going to circle around. Everyone's going to have forgotten. There'll be some other brand people are mad at, and that's just what it is.
Yeah.
But what I tend to find is that everybody, regardless of where they are on the spectrum, agrees that the government is screwing us.
Yeah.
So
fair.
when you're going through stuff, especially the more expensive it is, as that tax bill starts getting up into $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, when people start complaining about the price, be like, I hear you, man. Can you believe the government's getting 15 grand of that? And their eyes are just like, what? And it's like, yeah, that's how much. Could you imagine if you didn't have to pay sales tax on this? I could save you 15 grand right now. But look, buddy, the government's making almost as much as I am, and they're not doing anything. So how about we just get this done, move on, stuff costs what it costs. It really, people, they get so caught off guard by that massive tax number. Or even if it's like some regulation, right? There's a lot of different industries, insurance, cars, whatever it is, where the price keeps going up because of government regulation. So don't be afraid to mention and say specifically, hey, the government, they're putting a new regulation on these cars, and next year it's going to cost an extra $500. So you better get it now. Otherwise, you're going to have to pay for this stupid little light that you won't even notice, but they're going to make you pay for. Just be upfront and blame it on someone else. People love when there's a third party that's not in the room you can both talk shit
Magic.
about.
It's so much magic. I try to do it all the time, whenever possible. Like I don't even know if this is true, but I'm gonna blame it on them because I'm sure they're responsible somehow. Banking was so good to me, being able to talk shit on regulations. I'm like, and what is your physical? There's just so many questions to open a checking account. People get so pissed off, and I'm like, yeah, I agree. I think it's really dumb that in order to give us your money, you have to tell the government all this stuff. And oh man, it was beautiful.
Yeah. I think there's a really relevant lyric from one of my favorite songs from the band AJR. One of their songs is actually like really along these lines, but one of the lines is stay out of politics to keep half your fans. And it's just like, now to your point, Jeremy, it's starting to be like, get into politics to keep all of your fans, or like to keep half of your fans, because otherwise you're just going to lose them all. But one of the things that I'm really loving with what I'm doing right now with Crafton is where the amount of the scope of things that we're helping people with, and because we're able to help people from start to finish with the business. We're doing like LLC formation all the way through like to bookkeeping and like CFO services. And so much of that has to do with the government. And I'm writing like sales scripts for because we're like sponsoring podcasts and things like that. And I literally have in the podcast script like plus state theft instead of plus state fees because I can, and it feels fucking great. Like I can't express how awesome it is to be able to like actually type out on a graphic like state theft. It's because to your point, like I think you kind of have to associate somewhere on the political spectrum to be relevant because everything is political now. But I don't know if you have to take a side specifically on the duopoly like culture war spectrum. And we're going to test this out, but I firmly have faith that kind of going with a brand of not necessarily libertarian specific, but like we're going to help you run your business as successfully as possible, especially avoiding how like the state taking any of your profit as much as possible. Like that's a guaranteed thing because that's helping you succeed. And the people that don't care about it don't have to really care about it. We can just help them. But the people that do hate the government already and who are maybe hesitant on having an LLC because I don't want to register with the government, it's like you have a team behind you that is going that's like run by anarchists that is going to help you do this as best as you can. You don't have to be scared even if you're an anarchist.
They don't even have to hate the government per se. They could just, be your kind of average run-of-the-mill conservative who's like, I don't like what they're doing with my money these days. I want to make sure I minimize that as much as possible. And it really comes down to knowing your audience and not being afraid when people say no. To go, all right, cool. Well, they were my customer to begin with.
Something we've talked about for like, a medium to long-term plan when we have the money to kind of do things like this is like a chunk of time where like all the profit from every like occupational licensing that we help people get is going to lobbying to end occupational licensing.
Dig it.
Because
I love that.
Fuck that. And every business owner I've ever talked to has been like, I hate that. As long as they're like fairly new in it. If they're like 20, 30 years and they're like, no, that's the thing that helps me not get competition. But all new business owners hate occupational licensing.
Because it's a massive drag. It makes it way more expensive for them to get started, to hire employees. It makes their employees actually earn less, which most folks think of, occupational licensing, you're a licensed beautician or whatever, you're going to make more money, but it's not real. It never really comes to fruition that way. You'd make much more money if you could just enter the field. No one's ever been able to explain to me why the government needs to be involved in braiding hair.
Because they can't.
It's indefensible. But it's money. That's really what it always comes down to.
They want the tax money.
Right.
It's been encouraging to be able to I guess as disheartening as the trend that you're talking about is, Jeremy, I think it is kind of nice to be able to sprinkle these kinds of things into conversations a little bit more seamlessly and without pushback as much as we probably would have gotten, say, 15 years ago. You know, we
Yeah.
wouldn't have been able to talk shit about the Bush administration the way we did about Trump or Biden, you know?
No. Yeah.
It's just not a thing.
Exactly.
All right. So I want a couple of like cute sales tricks that you've learned throughout your days in sales. And I'll actually start off with this one as an example, because I just wrote it into a script yesterday and it's fun. Something I learned early on in cold calling is to, rather than ask, is this a good time? Because people are primed for that question, to just be like, oh no, I'm busy. To ask them, is this a bad time? And most of the time they just go, oh no, it's fine. It's like, oh wait, I just lost my way to get out of this phone call. But they're so primed to say no, that was the first thing after they answer the phone call, that if the first question you ask them is this a bad time, they'll hit you with that instant no that they already had loaded and ready to go, and you just opened your call up.
Yeah. That inverse works in a lot of ways, where you ask negative questions instead of positive questions, that that the no is actually a good thing for you. Yeah. So what like when you close, instead of saying does that sound good, you go, are you opposed to moving forward? Is one of those examples.
I'll write that down.
Yeah, no questions will help you make a lot more money, and it'll make the process a lot smoother. I used to use an opener similar to that, David, and then I started doing, I learned this from a guy called Ben Delaney, I think, the UK's most hated sales trainer. But the format is basically, hey, David, it's Harrison. Going to let you know up front, this is a cold call, so you can hang up on me now or give me 30 seconds. What do you want to do? And then right then, if they say, oh, I'll give you 30 seconds, I've got them. Because after I go through my elevator pitch, I'm going to ask them for another minute of time. I'm going to say, hey, that's my 30 seconds. Do you mind if I take another minute of your time to ask a question, or would you like to hang up? If they hang up, that's a no. I'm moving on to the next one. Within less than a minute of being on this phone call, I already know they don't need me. Call the next person. But if they give me another minute, then I can start asking questions about their environment and start leading into how can I help and figuring stuff out. But yet using no questions is huge.
Yeah. I also really like what you just said, because if you can make it through that 30 seconds uninterrupted, like your perfectly polished elevator pitch in that 30 seconds, and then they hang up after that, you still got all of the information you needed to get out for them to call you back when they actually do want to hear the other minute.
And if they say, no, I don't want to talk to you, okay, great, I'll send you an email. So when you do, what's the best email to send it to? And then if they haven't hung up, they're still giving you information. And then you can ask them, all right, cool, when I send you this email, what information would you like to learn more about? Is there anything in particular you got going on I can send you information on? Maybe send me something on laptops. All right, cool. What kind of laptops? What do you need them for? So that way I can send you specifically what you're looking for. Beautiful. And then you took this no all the way to almost a quoting opportunity. Now that doesn't happen very often, but it's never going to happen if you don't have the guts to do it.
I love it.
And that's kind of like being persistent, right? You have to be persistent in sales, because if you're going to help somebody, then they have to give you information, right? They have to be willing to answer your questions. And especially, that's why I love telling people they can hang up on me, no hard feelings. Because I kind of want them to hang up. I'd rather them hang up than be on the phone for 25 minutes with me and then go, yeah, I don't really need anything. I just wasted your time. So it's easier for both parties if you just get that out in front, master your elevator pitch, get it done in like 25 to 28 seconds. That way you can take a breath and you're still under 30. Get that next sentence out where you're like, hey, mind if I take another minute? And then you're in like Flynn, And people are so caught off guard by it, because they're so used to just having folks either go, hey, is this a bad time or should I call you later? And when you just hit them right up front, you don't even give them your company, right? You just, hey, this is Harrison. It's a sales call. Because at the end of the day, in sales, you have to sell yourself. Like Jeremy's not going out there and selling whatever company all the time. He's selling the relationship between him. That's how you become a successful salesperson.
Yeah. So there's two that I feel like are kind of signature moves of mine if they were my WWE. So one is if you're in a space where it makes sense and you can be presumptive. So right now I'm in a space where I don't have a lot of pain points to focus on. As far as like what our product solves, because it's fun stuff. It's events, it's having a good time, right? So what I try to focus on for being presumptive with my pain points. So for example, let's say I've got a lead that comes in and they are interested in doing a bachelor party with us, right? I have planned bachelor parties. It fucking sucks. And it takes so long. There's so much communication with everything. So I will, as soon as I call them, hey, this is Jeremy from blah, 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 following up on your inquiry. If I had to guess right about now, here's how you're feeling, blank, 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 right? And they go, oh, how did you know? I go, I do this all day long. And so I've sort of been presumptive about the emotions they're going through in this process, because in a lot of fields, there was this old adage that we taught back in my Cutco days. It was that people hate to be sold, but people love to buy. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I don't even know that's true anymore. I think people fucking hate buying too. Like, it's so readily available for us at all times. So what I'm trying to do there is presume her emotions and then make myself as the person who's going to make this process very easy for them, make it painless, and help them check it off their to-do list. So I say, hey, if I had to guess, you need to go back and take this to everybody in the group, right? And they're like, yeah, probably. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and format an email that covers everything that we went over in the simplest possible terms so that they can give you a simple yes or no. Does that sound good? Cool. All right, great. Now, it's probably important to get a deadline from them so that you can get this off your plate and we can make some decisions on moving forward. What do you want that deadline to be? Oh, probably. Blah, blah. I think that sounds fair on our end too. We'll know what our availability still is at that point and we'll be able to work it out, right? So all of it is about making the process as simple, easy, and painless as possible. People don't shop on Amazon for like you can get the products on Amazon everywhere else, but why do they shop at Amazon? It's simple, it's painless, it's easy.
Yeah.
People don't love to buy, they just want it to be painless. So that's my first one. My second one is to help sort of build trust. I will do something called downselling in B2C. You could probably do it in B2B too. But essentially after your discovery phase where you've leaned in and you've kind of, okay, so if you're telling me so what you're telling me is that the real problem you're dealing with is X, it's going to end up costing you X over the next few years, and solving it is worth this for you. You have this in your budget, but you have this that you could possibly go get. As I'm taking a look at this, I think in a lot of circumstances when I meet with a business, I start with this product right here, and here's what it costs. So I'm anchoring too. But I'm going to be honest with you, based on where you guys are at, I don't feel like that's a good fit for you. And then I will talk them out of one of my more expensive options so that I've built some trust in here's why this is the solution specifically for you. It worked really well in phone cases. We saw a major spike in phone case sales. I ran a call center with 300 chat agents. They were in the bubbles trying to sell cell phones, right, for a large telecom company. And basically, we were really struggling converting case sales. And so that's one of the things we added in is we had to, I got in a little hot water. So I had to back away from it being a script every time. But they began using a script that was like, look, we have this $90 case. And there are $90 phone cases that do da 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 da. But based on what you've told me, this case is going to be more apt to your lifestyle. And it only goes for this much.
Oh, he's froze, I think.
Oh.
But yeah, that is such a good move, is the, move down a level where, say I've got a customer, whether it was in car sales, right? I've got a customer, they've got a monthly budget of X to dollars, $500. They want a car that is probably going to cost them $600. And I try to bring them down and talk them down, but you do it in a way that shows empathy and understanding, and you're trying to solve a problem. You're not sitting there going, well, you're fucking broke, so we're going to move down. You're going, hey, here's everything you've given me. As a professional, this is the solution I have found. And it just so happens to save you a bunch of money. And then you can kind of, on the flip side, do that where you move somebody up a level where they're going, I don't know, that's too much money. Sometimes, especially in business to business sales, if somebody goes, that's too much money, they might mean it's too much for that thing, for that solution, because the solution doesn't provide enough value for the money.
Right.
They might be willing to spend more money if there was a better solution. So that's why you need to be willing to do both and understand when to do which one. Because like if you're out, say you're a pool salesman, and you're out selling a pool and you're talking to a family and you're, hey, we've got 8-foot pools, we got 10-foot pools, we got, pools with lights and whatnot. And then you go, hey, look, I understand you wanted the 12-foot deep pool that's 30 feet long. But based on what you said, it sounds like you could really get away with a 6-foot pool and it'd save you X amount of money. And then you could put that money into your patio area. And now you're coming up with some kind of solution that makes the entire purchase more enjoyable for the customer.
Yeah. I actually, when I was doing retail, and specifically my favorite retail job was Joseph A. Banks. I was actually, I was like base plus commission there, and like the lowest tier manager in the store. So it was like a real sweet spot that I honestly really loved. And I would kind of do the downselling thing, but it was specifically to get more commission because we had a bunch of different things running where either specific items were higher commission than others, or if you could get X amount of items that like, or accessory items per suit, you would get some sort of a bonus. We ran things like that fairly often as well. So I would end up showing somebody like a $600 suit and then kind of sell them on the $600 suit and be like, but you don't really have a really full out closet, and you're going to, your brother's wedding, and, you're going to want to look the best for the rehearsal dinner. That's what the suit's for. We could go down a little bit on the suit to make sure that you get a really high quality shirt and tie and everything, and shoes and everything else with it. Because shoes were like 10% commission, where everything else was like 6 or 7. And so I would do that fairly consistently, because we also had kind of like, I don't know if you guys are guitar people, but like Epiphone Gibson style, where it's like the exact same fucking thing, but just cheaper. And like a little bit shoddier stitch work. But given this guy's kind of, especially if they're not a suit person, it's like, if it's going to sit in your closet 11 and a half months a year and get worn like twice a year, the cheap suit's going to last almost just as long as the expensive suit. It's still going to be a 6-year suit either way. So I could take them down to like, it's the exact same color that I already sold you on, the exact same fit and everything from the same brand. But we dropped it down $200. So now I have $200 worth of shoes and ties I can sell you. And I had great success with that.
That's why as a manager, you got to get your incentive structures right, because every salesperson is going to find a way to game that shit. So yeah, I've seen it everywhere. I've done it myself. We all have. We all know it. So you better get your incentive structure right if you're a manager. I also tell about commissions and incentives and how salespeople will manipulate it a little bit to explain economics. like, listen, people always respond, and it's really crafted the way that I lead too. I'm like, look, I can go coach these salespeople, but the reality is, if the outcome doesn't change the incentive for them to actually do the behavior, what fucking difference does it make? Like, they don't care. Like, people respond to incentives, and that's what moves the needle. So.
I think the very best deal that I did for that one, I had a wedding party come in, and they wanted to like rent tuxes, and I had been moved from the tux rental position to this like semi-managerial position already, and so I wouldn't have made a commission off of the tux rental at all. Or it would have been like a $25 bonus for like the whole thing if I booked it. So I pitched them, and they came in, they already said like a fairly high budget, like they wanted like the Vera Wang, whatever. So I pitched them like pretty much the most expensive package that we had, and they loved it. And then I said, or you can get custom suits for each of your groomsmen for the same price. With embroidered on the inside, like your initials in the wedding date or something cute, or like their nicknames. We can have like the whole thing customized for them. They can own it forever. And it's like $50 more a suit. And they're like, okay. And we made 10% commission off of custom. So that went from like a $25 bonus to like a $1,200 bonus in just that one little switcheroo. And they were so much happier with it. And they were totally fine with it was one of those, like, her dad had like set aside like 50 grand for the wedding when she was really young kind of thing. And like, he's also putting in a bunch of money, and they just were going crazy with it. I'm like, let's make some money here.
Sounds like that marriage is going to fail.
That would be an interesting stat. How many of the weddings that I've either set up the wedding or the tux have ended in divorce?
They have data that shows the more that's spent on the wedding, the less likely it is to last, the shorter it lasts. Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Well, then I guess my super cheap 2-person wedding should have good home.
Yeah, we spent a lot on my first one.
I spent nothing on my first one, and I'm still divorced. So who the hell?
Well, there you go. Yeah,
it's just a product of my occupation at the time. I think, but.
All right. Well, I won't hold you guys for too much longer. So, in closing, give the audience, if somebody in the audience is thinking, I might want to apply for a sales job tomorrow, give them like your number one piece of advice.
Be pretty picky about, do your research on what you're selling, what the lifestyle is going to look like, and be sure that it fits. We're all wired a little bit differently, and so we all sort of gravitate to different industries. One of the reasons that I spent so long in banking was because it's literally the easiest thing in the world I've ever sold. It's like, oh, I want a checking account. Okay, great. Do you also want a savings account? Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. Hey, do you want free money in the form of a credit card? Yeah, okay, that sounds good. Blah, blah, blah. It's fucking easiest shit ever. I could just show up, kick ass, and go home, right? So, but I never made a lot of money doing it, and that's why. So you just do research on your product, what you want to do, if it's a good fit. And by the way, it's bullshit that you have to like your product or be a consumer of your product. That's total nonsense. Nobody in the software as a service industry would buy software as a service for themselves or like their own. So like, stop. All right. So that's number one. And then number two is go get a couple books. Just go and in the local part of your Barnes, do Barnes and Noble still exist? So go pick up a Zig Ziglar book. Go pick up even just How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And if you like what you read in that, you should do it. You should go apply. Give it a shot. Final point. Even if you hate it and suck at it 6 months later, the personal growth that you will get from it is incredible and priceless. It's why it was so hard to leave Cutco. Yes, as a matter of fact, pick up a copy of Closing Liberty. Oh, Closing Freedom. Closing Freedom. I have it. I've read it. It's a great book. Harrison Kemp, great author, that guy. No, no matter, even if you only go do it for 6 months, I spent 5 years at Cutco and never made a dime. It all went back into it, or I was barely scraping by to survive, but it was the best development for me as a person and what I needed at the time. It forced me to do hard things and go through a lot of growth. And then this is what's beautiful. You put it on your resume, and every interview afterwards wants to ask you about it. Even if you don't stay in sales and you go back in, they're going to go, so what was it like in sales? Tell me about how you did. It is impressive, because even if you go into different fields, though the people hiring in those fields go, oh, well, I could never do sales. That's too difficult. And here's a guy who really challenged himself. Even if you suck, even if you fail, do it for 6 months and you'll be a different, better person for future jobs. All right, I'm done. Sorry.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, my thing, I would just say, if you want to get into sales, make sure that you love getting kicked in the dick while trying to help. That's really what it is. If you're a good salesman, that's what it is. Let me say, you can be a snake oil salesman who's out there just trying to make a buck and screw people over, but you're gonna get ran out really quickly. You're gonna have a horrible reputation. You'll get no follow-on customers, no repeat business. If you want to do it right, you're going to get told no by a lot of people that you could help, even though you know you could help them and you could help them at a better cost than anyone else is going to. You can't take it personal. It's all business. The person you're talking to, they don't know you. They're not sitting there going, I hate Harrison Kemp. I hate everything, the way he does it. I hate the way he brushes his teeth, the way he puts his shoes on. Well, that's because you have to see it. You've seen it. But nobody that I'm on the phone with is sitting there going, man, I really hate this Harrison guy. They might not like me after we've dealt with each other for a little while, but it's not personal. It's just they don't need you, or they're in a bad mood. So learn to really just love the process and love what you do, and become attached from the outcome, like we said earlier. And the other thing I would say to Jeremy's point is, books are great. Audio books are awesome. There's so many YouTube channels. Larry Sharp has a great one, Neo Sage. Check that out. Brian's got a great one. Jeremy's got a show. David's got a show. I got a book. There's so many resources from folks that are like-minded that you can go out and get into. And then if you want something a little less libertarian, like, 92 Ways to Talk to Anybody by Leal, I forget her last name, but it's on Audible. It's a great book that'll just give you like 1 or 2 sentences at a time. Maybe it changes a couple of words in your normal sentence, but it makes all the difference. Sales really is the long-term study of human interaction, which is kind of what the studying of the economy is, right? Studying human interaction and how it all goes round. And, if you want to get into sales, just have thick skin. That's all I got to say.
Hell yeah. I'm going to build on a little bit of what Jeremy was talking about, and about like making sure that it's the right fit when you're kind of in the interview and applying process, and add on to realize that every sales manager and sales hiring position person in the world got promoted out of a sales job. They're salesmen. They're going to try to sell you on this job, and know that going in, know that treat it the same way, treat that interview the same way you would treat walking onto a used car lot. And have that in the back of your head that don't get sold on some great prize at the end of the tunnel that in 6 months you'll be you'll have my job and I make 10 grand. Don't do it. Think about it logically. Ask them the important, hard-hitting questions that will kind of break some of that down. Ask some reality questions of okay, but how many people quit within the first 2 weeks? Ask those kinds of questions and make sure that they're not selling you some pipe dream of a sales company. And I'll also go ahead.
onto David's point, ask very bluntly, what should I expect to get out of this job?
Mm.
If you ask your hiring manager that, what should I expect to get out of this? How am I going to grow? And make it, because you do want to bring it back to the money, but at the same time, the money's not everything about a position. Some positions you want to get into because it sets you on a path somewhere else, right?
Yep.
So just ask them, like, what is this going to give me? How is it going to help me? And don't make it 100% about the money, because hiring managers don't like that,
Right.
Yeah. And on the like books and audiobooks and YouTube channel conversation, I'll make 2 suggestions. A book called The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene. Don't take all of the book literally in your actual personal life. You will be a terrible, terrible, terrible narcissistic human being. But in sales, it's great. It's fantastic. And a little bit in life. It's a little helpful sometimes. And a YouTube channel called Charisma on Command. They're fairly short videos. They're all over the place. It's not really like sales specific, but it's just about kind of like being a better person and presenting yourself better. And like Harrison said, like just changing a couple of words here and there and how you do things. It's a great channel. They've been going for a while, and even a little bit on the liberty leaning side. So like, you're not going to hear some like stupid, like progressive liberal garbage out of them. At least they're big, like Peterson fans and such. So there's that.
Nice.
So thanks for coming on. First of all, like, this has been great. Tell people where they can find you and how to follow.
I'll let Harrison go since he's got the book deal. Or I'll let Harrison close since he's got the book deal. At JTodd601 on Twitter. I forget. We have a page called Sell Liberty on Facebook. We did about 10 episodes last year. We looked to do something similar this year with a little different format. And it's on YouTube and Facebook.
Oh yeah.
I'm on Twitter at the Maine Libertarian, the Maine, like the state, and on Facebook, just Harrison Kemp. You can find my books on Amazon. Just my name, Harrison Kemp. I got Closing Freedom, and then I got a book that's completely different, which is A Parasite's Paradise. It's more of it's a story. You'll enjoy it, especially your kids. Get them propagandized early. And also make sure to check out lpme.org. That's where I put all of the stuff that we talked about here into action for the movement. And we got a lot going on. So.
Oh yeah. Guys, thank you so much for watching. We will be back here next week on Wednesday with Gabby Cordova on Fight for Liberty, talking about what she does for the Mike Termott campaign. All the socials have been scrolling across the bottom. You know where to find me. We'll check you back here next time. Until then, keep up the fight.